Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman has the evening off. On the show tonight,
it's my store and it's my rules.
An update on where and when to wear a mask now that the city and state requirements have been lifted.
Enough is enough.
Calls for an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine as civilian casualties mount and thousands flee the conflict.
I am truly humbled by the extraordinary honor of this nomination.
Reaction to President Biden's Supreme Court nominee, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson.
If we don't do anything about the issues that we face, then things are going to continue getting worse.
A group of Amazon workers at 2 Chicago area warehouses say their organizing efforts have been paying off. A unit at the St. Regis Tower sells for millions. Can we expect more high-priced sales at the tower? That and more from Cranes. How getting more sleep could help people lose weight. A new study explains. And we head to the Cambria Hotel and introduce you to the newest performers under the big top. But first, some of today's top stories. As tensions worsen under nuclear threats, today's talks between Ukrainian and Russian officials aimed at reaching agreement were unsuccessful. Meanwhile, Ukraine signed an application to join the European Union today in an effort to strengthen its ties with the West. More than 500,000 refugees have fled Ukraine amid the ongoing Russian invasion, according to the United Nations. We'll have much more on the crisis in Ukraine coming up. Residents across Illinois, including in Chicago, can officially go maskless in most indoor public spaces. As of today, masks are no longer required in restaurants, bars, and fitness centers, and on a state level, K-12 schools and daycares. They're still required on transportation, including buses, trains, and planes. School districts and private businesses can still require masks at their discretion. Chicago Tonight's Amanda Vinicky has the latest in just a bit. After more than 200 attempts, the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act passes the House of Representatives tonight by a vote of 422 to 3. The bill, named after the black Chicago teenager who was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered in 1955, would make lynching a federal hate crime in the U.S. for the first time. Illinois Congressman Bobby Rush said in a statement, "We cannot bring back Emmett Till or the thousands of other individuals whose precious lives were lost to horrific acts of racial terror. But by finally passing the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act, we can finally turn the page from our nation's repeated failure to outlaw lynching on a federal level and end this long-standing injustice and painful affront to the African-American community." The bill now heads to the Senate for a vote. And up next, more on what you need to know about the end of the mask mandate in Illinois, so please stay with us.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabee family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
It's Maskless Monday in Illinois. For the first time in a long time, they are no longer required. Amanda Vinicky joins us now with what you need to know. Amanda, what do we need to know?
Well, Paris, since late August, if you've gone to the theater, a museum, the gym, went shopping, you have had to have your face covered. Not anymore. The governor issuing today a new executive order that lifts the requirement for masking in most indoor public settings. The order cites a, quote, vast improvement in COVID-related hospitalizations and transmissions, as well as new guidance from the CDC.
I love it. I'm so excited that we now have no indoor mask mandate, that we have no school indoor mask mandate, and it's all because the people of Illinois did the right thing throughout this pandemic, and that we've been able to bring hospitalizations down. I'm excited about the spring and the summer and what it's going to mean for everybody, that now we can all see our smiles.
There are exceptions. Masks are still to be worn anywhere the feds say they have to be, like on planes, also trains and other forms of public transit, and in congregate settings. So prisons and homeless shelters also any health care setting. But they are no longer required in schools. A majority of districts in Illinois had already gone mask optional after a court ruling lifted a previous mandate. And while Governor Pritzker did appeal that, the state's high court says that issue is moot, that is, at this point. Now, Chicago Public Schools are still requiring masks per an agreement with the teachers union, but elsewhere in Chicago, bartenders, waitstaff, and patrons were all able to have their masks off. The city also no longer requiring proof of vaccination to go to places like restaurants and bars, a requirement that was instituted when the Omicron surged. Now, at the Dearborn downtown today, GM Gregory Samuel says everything went well on this first maskless dining day in a while. He says that the city, state, and CDC have done a good job guiding businesses throughout all of this, what he called craziness, and he's found that the best, easiest, and most consistent option is to follow their recommendations.
It feels freeing. It feels like we're taking one more step back from hell into what I don't think we'll ever be able to call normalcy again, but certainly into something that resembles life as we knew it before COVID.
You may find that some places do still require either proof of vaccination or the face coverings, and the executive order explicitly says they can. Nothing in it prohibits an individual from choosing to wear a face covering or a public health or private entity from choosing to require face coverings in public settings. And then, as I noted, some places may also ask for proof of vaccination still.
And one thing that I would ask is that all Chicagoans, visitors to Chicago, just be very respectful of a business that wants to still require a mask or proof of vaccination, and also be very respectful of each other, of your neighbors, your family members, your work colleagues that may still feel more comfortable wearing a mask.
The owner of Wicker Park's Semicolon bookstore says it is more about comfort than it is about science.
For us, it's the sense of safety. Immunocompromised people exist, including myself. And so having that sense of safety in a space where people are talking animatedly and typically a foot away from you is incredibly important in our bookstore space.
Regardless of what the city or state do, she says that it's her store and her rules. And as the sole owner of the shop, she says if she and the staff do change their minds, they can do what they've done throughout the whole pandemic, and that is quickly pivot and readjust. But for now and the foreseeable future, if anybody comes in without a mask, she will give them one for free.
You know, we don't want to dive into the politics or the ins and outs of why you don't want to wear your mask or don't want to get vaccinated. It doesn't matter because you're going to wear your mask in this store regardless, and everybody's on the same page, and we don't have to discuss it further. What we can discuss are books. That's it.
Now, testifying today before a city council health committee, the city's top doctor testified that the lifting of the mask mandate does not mean that the COVID pandemic is over. Now, by the way, you're going to hear Dr. Allison Arwady in just a moment, and she sounds a bit, gravelly. She says that it is a cold, not COVID.
I'm very pleased we are at the place we are. We are at a place where it is safe to be lifting these requirements. I expect that a lot of folks will probably continue to wear masks in the short term. I fully support that. And I know you're hearing a whole range of things probably from your constituents, people very excited, people very worried. All of those, of course, are valid emotions, and we continue to, make the recommendations based on the risk here and now, which thankfully is low.
Already said that mask mandate could well be reinstated if COVID hospitalizations and severe cases surge. The best protection, she says, continues to be getting vaccinated. And for the time being, Chicago is still sending out a doctor or nurse, somebody to give that vaccination to the homes of anybody who has yet to receive a first or second dose. And for now, the offer still comes with a $50 gift card if you get one of those initial shots of the COVID vaccine. Paris, back to you without my mask.
All right, Amanda, good to see your face, although I've seen it every night as you've been coming to us from home. All right, thanks very much. Well, the Russian economy is beginning to deal with the fallout of major international sanctions as the value of the ruble has plummeted. This comes as Ukraine holds off Russian military forces for a fifth day, but fears now grow of a violent escalation in major cities like the capital, Kyiv. And the White House is playing down fears of a nuclear escalation after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced he would put Russia's nuclear forces on a heightened state of alert. Joining us now with more on all of this are Ivo Dalder, president of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Dalder formerly served as the U.S. ambassador to NATO. And Ian Kelly, the ambassador in residence at Northwestern University. Kelly formerly served as U.S. ambassador to Georgia. Prior to that, he was the U.S. ambassador to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Welcome, both of you, to Chicago tonight on this very consequential night. Ivo Dalder, let's start with these sanctions, not just on oligarchs and Putin himself, but today on the Russian central bank. What has the impact been?
Well, we'll have to wait and see what the impact is going to be in the longer term. But in the immediate term, there is a fear that the Russian economy is in some ways going to be shut down. The reality is that whatever foreign reserves that Russia now has can't be used because they can't be converted into rubles. That payments are coming in can't be converted into rubles, and as a result, the economy is going to be under severe pressure. You saw the stock market tanking, and it had to be closed today. And of course, you mentioned the fall of the ruble. These are just early signs of a very severe economic impact of these sanctions. Really, these sanctions in some ways are the most significant financial sanctions we have ever put on any country, probably bigger than Iran that had an oil embargo as well. But this economy is going to be under severe pressure, and that's exactly what President Biden and the leaders in Europe have been warning about. This was going to come, swift and severe. And
indeed, announcements that the Russian stock market won't open tomorrow. Ambassador Kelly, Ukraine has held off Kiev, much to many observers' surprise. I'm sorry, they've held off Russian forces, much to many observers' surprise. But the consensus is now that Russia might escalate its violence. There are reports of convoys heading toward the capital, Kiev. Do you fear that violence is going to escalate?
Yes, unfortunately, I do. I think that Kyiv is actually Putin's major goal in this war. He has said that he wants to basically take the government out that he sees as too pro-Western and anti-Russian. So he has kept forces in reserve. So I do fear that given the resistance that they're facing in the northern suburbs of Kyiv, that Russia will resort to even more forceful measures to try and force their way into Kyiv, and that would be the use of artillery and surface-to-surface missiles.
And Ambassador Dalder, this comes as Russia and Ukraine held peace talks on the border of Belarus. Do you anticipate that this avenue has any hope for a resolution?
No, I don't. I mean, other than the unconditional surrender by Kyiv, which is what Russia wants, or the complete and total withdrawal of all Russian forces from Ukrainian territory, which is Ukraine wants, I don't see there's a lot of compromise between those two objectives. It's always good to be talking. Clearly, the Ukrainians sent a serious delegation led by their Minister of Defense. The Russians didn't, frankly, send much of a serious delegation in return. Doors need to be open for talking and diplomacy in case there's some willingness to have that conversation. But we shouldn't put our hope at all on this kind of effort to stem the tide. I don't really see anybody solving this war as long as Vladimir Putin is in power and he hasn't achieved what he set out to achieve.
And a lot of us woke up to the news this weekend that Russian leader Vladimir Putin had put his nuclear deterrence on a heightened state of alert. Let's hear a bit of what he said.
Top officials in leading NATO countries have allowed themselves to make aggressive comments about our country. Therefore, I hereby order the Minister of Defense and the Chief of the General Staff to place the Russian Army Deterrence Force on combat alert.
And Kelly, there's a lot of reporting that Putin has changed from the way he's been over the last several years, more strategic. Now he's more isolated, perhaps more rash and impulsive. What should Americans make of this stance?
Well, it's not the first time that Putin has taken an opportunity to react to what he sees as a threat with an overreaction. And of course, this is clearly an overreaction, raising the preparedness of nuclear forces in reaction to statements from the West. I see it more as trying to deter further damage to his economy. I think he's been really taken aback at the kinds of measures that we've introduced, especially the cutting off the Russian central bank from their reserves, from their foreign currency reserves. So I see it more as a way to stop us from using our nuclear option, which would be stop buying Russian oil and gas. That would dry up a big part of the Russian government's income. Something like half their budget is covered by oil and gas exports.
And no doubt a lot of this is the reaction to the uniformity of opposition among Western alliance countries. Ivo Dalder, you see Germany shutting down the Nord Stream pipeline. They have adopted a much more aggressive defense posture. How consequential has this uniformity of opposition been among EU and NATO countries?
It's been extraordinary. I mean, the invasion has fundamentally shifted the terms of debate in Europe, as indeed in the United States. We lived for a long time in a belief that we could have some form of engagement and cooperation with Russia, and now it's about confrontation and conflict. And what the Germans did over the weekend is really remarkable when you think about it. They shut down Nord Stream 2 as the first act. They are sending weapons to an area in conflict which is contrary to the law, so they had to change their law. They're spending $100 billion, actually euros, so $110 billion more on defense this year, and will put in their constitution that they will henceforth spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense. And these are remarkably big steps. They also joined all of the financial sanctions, which is going to have an impact on German business, and they've done it within less than a week. It's a complete turnaround, and it just demonstrates how serious the Europeans, led by the Germans and others, are taking what Putin has done. He is trying to revise the post-Cold War order, a Cold War order that led to German unification, by the way. He's trying to revise it, and clearly the answer, not just from the East Europeans, who've always been strong on this, but from all Europeans is yet. Not going to happen. We're going to be united in opposing this, and we're going to make sure that we're going to help Ukraine in every way we can, short of putting our own military forces on the ground.
Ian Kelly, we only have a few seconds left, but everyone knows the massive propaganda operation that Russia employs to its own people. What are the odds that enough Russians put pressure on Putin to either change course or threaten his very career?
Well, I think, we saw today, I think, the beginning of some real rancor among Russian citizens being unable to withdraw foreign currency from their accounts. I think that's going to lead to an erosion of support. But I think that in the longer term, what will really affect public opinion is the news of casualties. He was able to take over Crimea without firing a shot, was able to conceal the casualties in the Donbass in 2014. He's not going to be able to do that with this kind of massive invasion of Ukraine. So I think you will see some erosion of support. Whether or not it will lead to a change in his decision-making, I don't know.
Yeah, a lot to watch for, and our thanks to Ivo Dalder and Ian Kelly. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And up next, how Amazon workers are advocating for changes in the workplace. So please stay with us.
Certainly we can celebrate, but we also have to recognize what so many people have gone through because of racism and what people continue to go through.
I think that Americans are finally beginning to embrace that we are African, we are indigenous, we are European, we are Asian, we are everything.
Amazon is the second largest private employer in the United States. In recent years, the popularity of its quick deliveries has meant the company has needed to grow fast, with hundreds of sorting and delivery warehouses around the country. But the company's also faced pushback over pay and working conditions from some of its employees, with staff in cities including Chicago banding together to try and change things. Chicago Tonight's Nick Blumberg is here with more. Nick.
Well, Paris, you might remember that last year employees at an Amazon facility in Bessemer, Alabama, outside Birmingham, voted against joining the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. But the National Labor Relations Board threw out the results of that election, citing company interference, and ordered a revote, the results of which will get tallied starting in late March. There's also a unionization vote in New York at that same time. And right here, a group of workers called Amazonians United Chicagoland says it's seen success from its organizing efforts, including after a recent work stoppage.
We're walking out! Here we go!
3 days before Christmas, dozens of employees at two Amazon warehouses in Southwest Side Gage Park and Cicero walked off the job.
We got fed up with being underpaid, overworked, lied to. They weren't keeping their promises.
Among other things, the organized employees wanted the freedom to work a variety of roles within the warehouse to reduce physical strain, and a $5 increase in their hourly pay.
It was basically like, we got to unite, we got to do something about it, because if we don't, then nothing's going to get done about it.
This month, Amazon gave them a raise. New employees will now start at $18 an hour, up from $15.80.
Not everything that we asked for, but it was about half. And I think we even won it for some other facilities here in the Chicagoland area.
Amazon denies that the raise was related to the walkouts. In a statement, the company said, quote, "The recent pay adjustments were part of a regular wage review process that occurred over several months and impacted employees at more than 24 sites around Chicago." The organized workers also say morale has improved since the December action.
Now we feel like management is walking on eggshells. I feel like we turned the tables on them.
Amazonians United is not a formal labor union. Since forming at a now shuttered warehouse in McKinley Park in 2019, the group's led walkouts and petitions for things like water for employees, COVID safety measures, and accommodations for long overnight shifts. Organizers don't disclose how many members are in the group, but say they're active at both the Gage Park and Cicero facilities.
What we're doing, it's union work. We consider ourselves a union, whether Amazon recognizes us or not.
It doesn't, but the company has agreed to make it easier for employees to organize. In a late December settlement with the National Labor Relations Board, Amazon agreed to notify workers around the U.S. of their rights to take collective action or unionize, and said it wouldn't interfere with those efforts.
We deserve more, and we deserve better than what we're receiving.
Chris Smalls is the president of the Amazon Labor Union, which is organizing workers in Staten Island. Smalls says he was fired after leading a COVID safety walkout, and after last year's failed vote in Alabama, decided to organize his former workplace as part of an independent union, not affiliated with an established organization.
We think that we have a better chance to pretty much take on the onslaught of the union busting that Amazon does, because they can't use the same spills that they do with an established union.
And Amazonians United Chicagoland members say affiliating with an established union would feel like an unnecessary go-between.
We're the ones that know how things are inside the warehouse, and if we see that, we believe if someone else steps in from as a union rep, we fear that they won't listen to our voices.
Members also say they've seen quicker results than they think a traditional union can offer without the work of trying to organize a formal election. Right now, the group's deciding the next issues workers want to tackle and thinking about expansion. Their goal?
A presence at every facility so that these people know that they've got to respect us because we're the ones that do the work. And if they disrespect us, we can choose to not do that work.
In a statement on the various organizing efforts facing Amazon, a spokesperson said, quote, "As a company, we don't think unions are the best answer for our employees. Every day we empower people to find ways to improve their jobs, and when they do that, we want to make those changes quickly." That type of continuous improvement is harder to do quickly and nimbly with unions in the middle. We've made great progress in recent years and months in important areas like pay and safety. There are plenty of things that we can keep doing better, both in our fulfillment centers and in our corporate spaces for employees, and that's our focus. Paris?
All right, Nick, thanks very much. And we should mention to our viewers that this is your first day as a full-time reporter. You've been with us, of course, for many years as a producer and part-time reporter, but welcome to the full-time staff.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited. I started producing in 2014. I've been on air periodically since 2016. So I'm excited to build on that and keep contributing to all the great work coming out of the newsroom. But I should mention that story in 2016 was not my first time appearing on WTTW. Take a look.
We have a special birthday boy in the studio today. Nick is here, and we'd like to say hello to Nick. There he is on your screen. Nick is 6 years old today, and I can tell you that this guy's, he's a member, first of all. He's watched a lot of Channel 11, and he is sitting there writing scripts for future television shows. I just reviewed them. This young man needs an agent, ladies and gentlemen. He's got a bright future in whatever he decides to do.
So there you have it. Famous last words, famous first words, not sure.
You know, Nick, part of this job is going and answering pledge phones during the pledge drive, so it looks like you have experience with that, too.
I cannot wait to get started.
All right, Nick, well, great job. And congratulations.
Thanks, Paris.
New reports from insurance company State Farm signal just how much the pandemic has upended the auto insurance industry. The old post office welcomes another tenant, and the St. Regis Tower sees its highest price sale so far. Here to go behind the headlines is Crane Chicago business editor Ann Dwyer. Ann, great to see you as always. Let's start with Bloomington-based State Farm Insurance. They reported a $3 billion loss insuring cars last year, but on the flip side of that, they signed up more policies than ever. So what does this mean for their bottom line in the auto insurance industry writ large?
Well, you know, this time last year, Paris, everybody was still largely hunkered down, and that was good for State Farm's auto business because it meant fewer of us were out driving and having expensive accidents. Now, fast forward a year later, and people are out driving, and they are reporting at State Farm that they did take a $3.4 billion loss in the business of covering auto owners. But even so, their overall investments did help push the company into the black. Also on the plus side, they logged record growth in policies, which is something that could be profitable down the road. And they did that by getting very competitive on price.
So a little bit of bad news, but dressed by good news for State Farm. Let's talk about the Old Main Post Office, home to Walgreens. Uber has offices there. A new tenant. Tell us about them.
The tenant is Village MD. Now, they are a partner with Walgreens. In fact, they got a big cash infusion from Walgreens last fall, $5.2 billion. They're in the business of opening primary care clinics in Walgreens stores and other types of locations. They did determine that they needed a bigger office footprint now, so why not be close to where Walgreens is going to be there at the old post office. Now, the old post office is now almost fully leased, and it's a sign that if you're willing to, you know, cut some deals as a landlord, offering tenants some sweeteners and incentives, you can still fill up an office tower in downtown Chicago. You just have to be creative.
Yeah, pretty amazing considering where the Old Main Post Office was 10 years ago. All right, more real estate news. The 80th floor unit at the St. Regis Tower sold for nearly $9 million. Now, St. Regis, that's the old Vista Tower designed by Jeannie Gang. So does that mean there are going to be a lot more big dollar sales?
They keep on coming, Paris. Every time we think that the market's going to cool off at that range, we find out about new deals being signed. And our understanding is beyond this I believe it was $8.85 million deal that just we learned about today, that there are 6 more contracts pending at higher price points in that building. So, you know, if you're shopping for real estate in the $8 million and up category, you have some competition, apparently.
The money just keeps moving in the high-end sector of the real estate market in Chicago. All right, Ann, thank you so much.
Thank you, Paris.
And still to come on Chicago Tonight, a look at what's ahead for President Biden's Supreme Court nominee, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. How increasing the number of hours of sleep could be an effective way to battle obesity. That and other findings of a recent sleep study.
it really makes you appreciate the power of just being in the same room.
Yeah. And trapeze couple Duo Rose share why audience interaction makes all the difference during showtime at the Teatro Zinzani. But first, some more of today's top stories. Elected officials and community leaders launched a bill that would make Illinois the first state to provide affordable health coverage to undocumented low-income immigrants aged 19 to 54.
It is time to make sure the 149,000 people that live in this state right now, worried about an emergency room visit, worried that they've worked 60 hours a week every single day during this pandemic, that they cannot afford to go to the doctor, that they cannot afford an emergency room, that they know that Healthy Illinois will lead the way in the General Assembly of Illinois to make sure that they too have health care finally in this state.
And this would be an expansion to a program that will allow Illinois to provide Medicaid-like health benefits to undocumented immigrants over age 55 starting in May. The proposal includes immigrants with legal status who don't yet qualify for state or federal programs. Spring training for Major League Baseball players is not in full swing due to an owner-imposed lockout, and now the start of the 2022 regular season could be at risk as well. Major League Baseball says it will cancel regular season games if it doesn't reach an agreement with the MLB Players Association by the end of day today. Part of negotiations includes increasing the minimum salary for younger players. For now, opening day remains scheduled for March 31st with the White Sox hosting the Minnesota Twins and the Cubs on the road against the Cincinnati Reds if labor peace prevails. The Obama Presidential Center's first commissioned artwork will come from renowned Chicago artist Richard Hunt. The Obama Foundation says Hunt's piece, called Bookbird, will be featured at the Chicago Public Library branch on the center's grounds. Hunt was born and raised in Woodlawn on the city's south side. He's the first in a series of artists to be announced by the Obama Foundation. Hunt was last featured on Chicago Tonight for his monument honoring trailblazing journalist Ida B. Wells. The Senate Judiciary Committee is expected to meet soon to discuss hearings on Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. President Joe Biden announced Jackson as a Supreme Court nominee late last week. Jackson is no stranger to the Senate, recently getting confirmed to her current position on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, with all Democrats as well as 3 Republicans confirming that nomination. If confirmed by the Senate this time, Jackson would make history as the first black woman to serve on the nation's highest court. And joining us now with more are Joseph Morris, partner at the law firm Morris and De La Rosa and a former Assistant Attorney General under President Reagan. And for transparency, we should note that Mr. Morris is also the chair of WTTW's Community Advisory Board. David Franklin, Associate Professor of Law at DePaul University. Franklin clerked for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Corey Carew, Chief Inclusion and Diversity Officer at Seyfarth Shaw. And Audra Wilson, President and CEO of the Shriver Center on Poverty Law. Welcome all of you to Chicago Tonight. Audra Wilson, I'll start with you. Your reaction to the nomination of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Well, thank you. And as I had said before, when I had the opportunity to talk about the possibility of nominating a black woman, I knew about Judge Jackson. I knew she was on the short list. She has the most impressive and impeccable of credentials: Radcliffe, Harvard Law, having clerked for three federal judges, including Justice Breyer himself. So I think this is an amazing nomination. I knew it was coming, and I just hope that she is not going to be having to deal with a lot of the things that are already, some of the backlash and things that are coming from conservatives with her nomination.
And David Franklin, you knew her personally. While she clerked for Breyer, you were clerking for Justice Ginsburg. What was your impressions of her? What were your impressions of her?
Yeah, Ketanji, as we called her then, or Judge Jackson, as I'll call her now, is terrific. She is thorough, detail-oriented. She's a terrific researcher and writer. And she also happened to be one of the most popular law clerks. She's just warm and has a terrific energy about her, just a very kind person. And I would expect that if she's confirmed, she'll probably share Justice Breyer's sort of pragmatic focus on problem solving. But she also might have some of Justice Sotomayor's willingness to speak her mind on matters that are deeply important to her. So it'll be interesting to see if she's confirmed just what kind of justice she turns out to be.
And Joe Morris, I was going to ask you that, is there anything from her decisions in her lower court positions that give you a sense of what her judicial philosophy might be?
Well, I've looked at her lower court decisions, and first of all, let me say I am delighted to see the nomination by President Biden of a judge who will come to the Supreme Court with an unusual background for a Supreme Court justice. She's been a trial judge. She was a trial judge in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, as she's now an appellate judge. So she will have served at all three levels of the federal judiciary, and that's an unusual career path for a Supreme Court justice. I think that's a wonderful thing. She has made a valiant effort to accommodate herself to the stream of legal thinking that goes by the term originalism or textualism. In several opinions that she wrote as a district judge, and in her one major opinion as a Court of Appeals judge, she has shown an ability to apply that technique, that approach to judicial reasoning. I do not see, however, a clear judicial philosophy emerging from her judicial record. I do not know her personally. I have read her decisions. What I see in her written decisions is a very smart, very intelligent judge whose work is well within the mainstream of the American legal tradition. If I were a member of the Senate, a Republican member of the Senate from the state of Illinois, based on what I know about Judge Jackson today, I would vote in favor of confirming her.
And we'll see if there is bipartisan support here. Corey Carew, Joe mentioned her unusual background here, also served as a public defender. What do you think this diversity of experience will mean for her judicial philosophy if she is confirmed?
Thank you very much for that question. You know, her diversity of experience, as well as the diversity that she brings as a person from an underrepresented group, is definitely going to lend itself to bring in different perspectives to her decision making, as well as the discussions with the fellow justices on the bench. We know that our experiences definitely shape the lenses through which we see and how we judge. And of course, as lawyers, we are bound by precedent. We don't get to go off and make up the rules as we wish. Having that diversity of experience as a public defender, having trial experience and having served in the public sector as well as the private sector, is going to bring a very well-rounded lens to the decision-making process. And that's just a wonderful thing that we're thankful for.
And David Franklin, we mentioned that she's no stranger to this process with the U.S. Senate, confirmed twice before for the Circuit and Appellate Court. She got bipartisan support the last time around, about 9 months ago. Do you think that there will be a bipartisan path to confirmation this time around?
I don't know. You know, in theory, it doesn't matter as long as the Democrats hold their votes together, because the vice president can cast the deciding vote. I would hope that she would get the support of Republican senators who think like Joe Morris, but I'm not going to hold my breath about that. I think we live in an incredibly polarized time. But I do think that regardless of whether she's confirmed or not, she's going to be in the minority, in dissent, in case after case, because there's a 6-3 conservative supermajority on this court. And it's a court that is reaching out to decide cases in all kinds of controversial areas, be it affirmative action, abortion, gun rights, et cetera, where I expect that at least for the first several years, a Judge Jackson will find herself to be more of a voice crying in the wilderness than the kind of consensus builder that I think her mind and her personality sort of cuts her out to be.
Right, replacing Justice Breyer, certainly not expected to change that 6-3 balance. Audra, do you foresee any kind of road bump to her path to confirmation?
I tend to agree with David. It's really difficult to say. I know a lot of the rhetoric that has come out, including very racist rhetoric, suggesting that people should be nominated for what they do and not how they were born, which is interestingly because This is why she was nominated for what she does and her impressive and impeccable credentials. But unfortunately, thinking of the nature of politics today and how partisan things are and the undercurrent of racism is that, yes, I think there are going to be some attacks on her that really have nothing to do with those credentials. They're going to be much more ideologically driven. But I am hoping that there are going to be some voices of reason that realize that there's really no reason to assail her character or her credentials, that she is probably far more qualified than many people in recent history who have been at least nominated. So I'm hoping, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that there's going to be some voices of reason.
And Joe Morris, President Biden did get some pushback for promising that it would be an African-American woman, and he made this promise on the campaign trail in South Carolina. Do you agree with that approach?
No, I think the racist in this picture is Joe Biden. I think it was shameful that Joe Biden, in effect, made Judge Jackson an affirmative action nominee. She deserves to be considered on the merits of her credentials, on the merits of her personality, on the merits of her mind, on the merits of her work as a lawyer and as a judge. I think it was a mistake for President Biden to say that she was being nominated simply because of her race and her sex. I also thought it was a mistake for my boss, President Reagan, to say that he was nominating Justice O'Connor, Senator Day O'Connor, the first woman on the court, simply because of her sex. That's wrong. Judge Jackson should not go down in history as an affirmative action asterisk. She has the ability to go down in history as a very serious and accomplished judge. And by the way, the 6-3 votes are things that happen importantly only at the margins. The vast amount of the work of the court is arrived at by decisions that are much closer, I mean, much bigger than that. That is, they're often what we would call in a political context, and this is not one, a bipartisan majority. Often the court is unanimous. Often there are alignments of the justices that go outside that 6-3 nominally partisan arrangement. I think it's important to understand that the judges are not meant to be representatives. They're meant to decide questions of law based on decisions made by other people, Congress, the Constitution, the people who write contracts and wills and so forth, that are external to the judges. If I have any criticism of the representation, that the diversity, the lack of diversity in the nomination of Judge Jackson, it is her law school. She will be yet another Harvard lawyer on the court. There are currently 4 Harvard lawyers and 4 Yale lawyers on the court, and only 1 lawyer from anywhere else, and that's Judge Barrett from the Midwest. From Notre Dame.
Seems like Harvard, Yale, the pipeline to Supreme Court. Corey Carew, at the same time, though, how impactful is it that she is the first African-American woman on the Supreme Court? Or she would be?
Oh, it's supremely impactful. I mean, the fact of the matter is the Supreme Court has been dominated by white men, and white men are not the only form, gender, and color that excellence looks like in this country. And so this is where I would disagree with Attorney Morris, that by emphasizing that he was going to appoint a Black woman, what Joe Biden was doing was recognizing that there are immensely qualified Black women out there who have not been considered, because otherwise it would be to assume that the excellence that we see on our Supreme Court really only comes in one color and gender, and that's not accurate. The importance of this is thinking about it through this lens, that we live in a country that has made a promise around liberty and equality that has not been true for many, many people. And to see a Black woman on the Supreme Court, not just a Black woman, but a dark-skinned Black woman, and not just a dark-skinned Black woman, but a dark-skinned Black woman that wears her hair naturally, right? It's something that we don't see, especially for people like me who have children who, for example, had a Black teacher for the first time in their entire lives last year, or who on the television and don't see people like them.
Right.
It's someone who comes from a group that faces additional hurdles and challenges in the legal profession, in our society, and in our community. And so it's not just a reflection of achievement for the communities that she represents, but also an achievement for us as a country that we are at a place that color is being allowed to shine in the same way that we have seen happen for the majority.
And we'll continue to follow this confirmation process and hopefully talk to all of you again. And our thanks for now to Joseph Morris, David Franklin, Corey Carew, and Audra Wilson. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A good night's sleep is often hard to come by, but a new local study sheds more light on how 8.5 hours of shut-eye benefits our overall health. In fact, the difference between at least 2 extra hours of sleep could reduce overall caloric intake by an average of 270 calories per day. And extra sleep could be viable treatment for obesity. That's according to a recent JAMA internal medicine study from researchers at the University of Chicago and University of Wisconsin-Madison. And joining us is one of the authors of that study, Dr. Esra Tassali, director of the Sleep Center at the University of Chicago Medicine. Dr. Tassali, thank you so much for joining us. So if you could highlight the primary results and findings of your study, what did you find about the overall health benefits to getting 8 to 8.5 hours of sleep?
Thank you. Yes. So in our study, we found that getting sufficient sleep lowers the number of calories you eat by, on average, 270 calories a day, which has important implications for weight maintenance programs, weight loss programs.
And Dr. Tassali, have you found underlying scientific reasons of why that might be, that more sleep is connected to consuming less calories?
We did not necessarily examine mechanisms in our study. It was a real-life study at people's homes. But what we know from prior research that it's important to remember, it's not just about spending more time in bed and having less time to eat. It's also about being fully rested, making you feel less hungry, eating less calories, therefore having less risk for weight gain.
Maybe coping with some of that sleep deprivation by eating more sometimes. All right, describe the methodology of how you did this and how you were able to alter the sleep patterns of about 80 patients.
We studied adults who were overweight. They were also getting less than 6.5 hours habitual sleep per night, below the recommended 8 hours. We extended their time that they spend in bed by what we call personalized sleep hygiene counseling session. We went through their bedtime routine. It was a 1-hour face-to-face interview. We reviewed their social obligations, work schedules, family members, their pets, all their social needs. And we tried to add extra sleep wherever we can around the bedtime. And most people think that it's not an easy task. It's not as hard as people think. Doing small adjustments for a bedtime routine or around the wake-up time can provide extra sleep in daily schedule.
And that was going to be my next question. So during these personal sleep hygiene counseling sessions, what are the most common tips that you give to people to improve their sleep hygiene?
The most effective intervention in our sleep hygiene program was limiting electronics around bedtime, basically trying to stay away from social media or video gaming or responding to text messages. This was the most effective intervention. But besides that, certainly part of the sleep hygiene components include limiting the exposure to light, limiting stimulating activities, relying on relaxing activities such as reading an old-fashioned hardcover book or doing some exercise during the day.
And beyond this connection to obesity that you're finding, how important is 8 hours of sleep, 8.5 hours of sleep to our overall health? Or this myth that some folks can get by on 4 to 5 hours and just be fine. Is that a myth?
The recommended minimum number of sleep for adult population is 7 hours. So I think the 5 hour, for me at least by evidence for now, stays a myth. There could be exceptions, but generally speaking, the recommended minimum amount of sleep is 7 hours, 7 to 9 hours for adults. And I want people to also understand that sleep is not just for your brain, for feeling alert the next day or for your cognitive function, but also for the rest of your body. And our study speaks for that. in any way, it's beneficial. Sleep is beneficial for every cell in your body, for your metabolism, for your blood sugars, for your blood pressure, etc.
How connected do you think lack of sleep is to health problems in America, like obesity, like heart disease?
It is highly connected. Insufficient sleep has been shown in large epidemiologic studies to increase cardiovascular disease risk, metabolic disease risk, particularly diabetes, and even cardiovascular morbidity and mortality. And there is a parallel between the obesity epidemic that occurred over the past several decades and our sleep deprivation epidemic, which is happening at the same time. So I think that we're always preaching about diet and exercise, but sleep, getting sufficient sleep, could be a third pillar to healthy lifestyle behaviors.
Absolutely, a huge component to a healthy lifestyle. All right, very interesting study. Dr. Ezra Tesali, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we're back with more in just a moment, but first we take a look at the weather. Teatro Zinzani has returned for a dinner and show experience unlike any other. Arts correspondent Angel Ito introduces us to the Chicago artists that are taking center stage under the big top, along with a number of circus performers from around the world.
Welcome to the Big Top, home of Teatro Zinzani. It's Cirque du Soleil meets cabaret with a little circus action in between.
You can go and see any kind of music in Chicago. Things are, starting to open up again. And lots of different stories being told. None of that is going to be anything like what happens in here.
Comprised of circus performers from around the world, this unique dinner and a show is reminding audiences what it's like to consume live entertainment again.
It's not the way you smile that touched my heart.
Bethany Thomas plays Madame Zinzani, and it's her first year in the production. She grew up singing and performing throughout Chicago, but says nothing compares to this experience.
I've been very interested in just watching the audience and honestly seeing what they connect to and how. It's always just like, oh gosh, I really, really want to give them what they want. And what can I do in my performance to really do that? How can I be the best version of this character I'm supposed to play? My job is to please you right now. It's not for me to stand up for myself as an artist. It's not for me to try to win an award. It's like, I want to make you really have a good time right now.
Unlike traditional theater shows or performances, Teatro Zinzani almost always relies on improv.
The 2 weeks of rehearsal, I was like, let's make sure all the people that are doing these crazy stunts don't die, and everything else we'll figure out in front of people, in front of an audience. So yeah, there's been we've added in songs, changed songs. So many different transitions are still being reworked. You really don't understand what's going to work until you're in front of an audience. So it's been unconventional a little bit for what I'm used to, but now that I get it, I'm grateful to have the kind of flexibility.
Trapeze couple Duo Rose agree with Madame Zinzani. Samuel and Sylvia have been twisting and turning together for more than a decade. And while their work has allowed them to tour the world, they say nothing is quite like this production.
This one has a lot more story.
Yeah.
And also, I would say, a lot more integration between the cast.
We get to actually interact more with the guests here.
Also,
like most of the shows that we work, you just do your act and that's it.
It makes the audience more appreciative of what they're seeing as well, because they see you as a fuller human being and also much closer up.
So by the time that we've actually get to our act on the trapeze, we've had lots of experiences with those guests. We've played with them, we've talked with them, and when we're on the trapeze, it's more of a connection between us.
It's just like the monkey bars. Yep, and straight.
I don't know if I can do this. It was after I attempted a couple of trapeze routines that I realized just how much upper body strength is needed to perform in the air. When showtime begins, the trapeze artists swing 14 feet from the air. As you can see, the circus art is at the intersection of gymnastics, dance, and theater.
Oh. Yeah.
Okay. That's why they train 3 to 4 days a week for about 4 hours a day.
And so we'll run the act. We will do anything that kind of feels a little off during the act. So we'll run those sequences, we'll practice those sequences, and then we'll play. So we'll work on something new, or we'll work on something that's just for fun. And then we usually end each practice with conditioning, where I'm just kind of pulling her up and she's doing her pike throughs. Trapeze is a full body workout, so just doing it is a workout in itself, and you get to have fun doing it.
Yeah. Performers say it's great to be involved in a show where the ensemble extends beyond the stage.
People are so grateful to be out and just have fun that, like, animating with the guests, it was in the past, like, it took a little bit to warm them up, and here, like, now they just want to play. So it's really nice being able to interact and play with them, because they really want to get into the joke. They really want to see what you're doing. So you feel a lot more, I don't know, I mean...
Feedback, I guess?
More feedback.
More energy back
more
from
energy,
them?
yeah.
But I also feel like the interaction makes them realize how different live performance is from screens.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Angelito.
And you can catch Teatro Zinzani performances Wednesdays through Sundays until August. Visit our website for more details. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And that is our show for this Monday night. Please join us in just a few minutes for our next virtual community conversation. Joanna Hernandez will moderate a discussion about Afro-Latino history and the nuances of multiracial identities. Again, that's online tonight at 8, and you can RSVP at WTTW.com/events. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a great evening.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that supports free educational initiatives in the legal profession.